our agency does economic development with all of our programs. So there are 6 regional offices within the agency, and Alaska is in the Seattle regional office. There's Denver and Austin, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Atlanta across the nation. So I'm going to share some of our investment criteria. With all federal agencies, there are certain criteria that applicants have to meet. And so these are our 4 primary criteria. The project needs to align with the EDA investment priorities, and it doesn't have to meet all of the priorities, but it has to meet at least one of them. The next one is a new private sector job creation. So when you think about EDA funding, you want to think about how your particular project is going to create private sector jobs, not jobs within your organization, but how private employers are going to create jobs because of your project. And the next one is attract private investment to the area or to the region. And that's the private employers investing the money that they make because of your project back into their own businesses or expanding their business. And it also needs to support the regional comprehensive economic development strategy. And we just call it a CEDS document. And so if the project does not align with the regional strategy, then we generally won't fund the project. So if you're looking at projects within, there's CEDS that are all across the state, and I think there's a CEDS for every region that the Long Trail covers. So you want to make sure that the holder of that comprehensive economic development strategy discusses recreation and or trail development. So I'm going to share our investment priorities. Equity. This administration is really big on equity, so you want to make sure that your project has the ability to advance equity and the benefits are shared equally with underserved individuals within the area of your project. Recovery and resiliency is another big investment priority, and in most of our notice of funding opportunities, those are probably the 2 major ones that are specifically identified, and you have to discuss how your project aligns with both of them. When we talk about recovery and resiliency, we're talking about economic recovery and resiliency, how your project is going to bring additional dollars into the region because of it. Workforce development is the third one. Manufacturing. Number 5, technology-based economic development. And environmentally sustainable development. We want to make sure that we're not hurting the environment. And 7, exports and foreign direct investment. And the foreign direct investment is attracting foreign direct investment back into the country. So we have a couple of major programs that we use, and planning and local technical assistance program is mainly for non-construction projects. It's to develop CEDS documents, community plans, do impact analysis, feasibility studies, business plans. Project planning, if you have a large project, I always recommend that you first do the project planning. That way you get everything all lined out before you come to us for construction funds. and economic disaster resiliency planning. And then most of the time, I'll let you know right off the bat, trail development is not something that EDA has thought a whole lot about until the downturn in the travel tourism and outdoor recreation. And so we've actually done one trail project with CARES Act funding, and that was in the Allegheny area on the other side of the country. They did some trail development. EDA provided $1.1 million, and they matched the EDA grant with 600,000. And that's the other thing. I didn't put it on a slide, but I'll let you know that generally EDA funds about 50% of the project, and the applicant has to come up with a 50% match. How you get EDA's partition increased is by looking at your unemployment rates or your per capita incomes. We will go up to about 80% of the project, but we start out at 50%. So the construction projects that we look at are foundational economic infrastructure. And most of this has been in docks and vessel launches, harbor improvements, vertical structures that relate to business development. Broadband, we do the middle mile, we don't do the first mile, and we don't do the last mile because of some of the requirements in our funding. Water and wastewater, roads, both of those need to relate to business development access. We do energy. We also do just design and engineering projects. And that's all I have for EDA, and this is my contact information. If you have any projects that you may be thinking of, you want to contact me. We're kind of a hands-on agency. We work really closely with the applicant as they develop their project, because I will let you know that our application process is not an easy process. And so when I work with an applicant, I really work hard trying to get their project approved by the folks in our headquarter office that's back in Washington, D.C. So that's why we take a hands-on approach in application development.
Great. Well, thanks, Shirley. Please leave your contact up there for a moment while people get to either write or screenshot that. And if anybody has any questions for Shirley, please enter them in the chat. But we really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about EDA today. And I know that there were a lot of people applying recently for sort of bigger grants. Is there a timeline for a next round, or what are your general timelines?
So the ARPA funding that we've had out since July 22nd. Oh, I have to tell you about the travel, tourism, outdoor recreation. We didn't expect to get as large of interest in that program. And just in the Seattle office, I didn't take a look at the statistics for the rest of the country, but we had about 58 million that was available for that program. Well, we received 400 million in requests for the 58 million. So it was a real popular program. And in our economic adjustment assistance program, we got almost 60 million in that program, but we've gotten 3 times the amount of applications than we have funding for. And in our indigenous communities, it is the same thing as the EAA. And I'm sure you all have heard about the Build Back Better program. We're still in technical review for the applications that we have received, and we should be known probably in June who the 20 or 30 applicants will be funded through that large program.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to move us along. I realize there's an ambitious agenda to try to get 7 folks into this time period. So we'll move right along to Lee Hart, who, in addition to being the founder of the Alaska Outdoor Alliance, is also on the board or steering committee, I'll have you correct me, Lee, of the Build Back Better for Alaska. And so we invited her here to talk about that organization, their goals, and how she hopes to fund outdoor recreation and outdoor recreation projects through her work there. So I hope that's a good enough introduction. Lee, please take it away.
Oh, that's perfect, Steve. Yeah, hey, thank you, Steve, and the team at Alaska Trails for inviting Build Back Better Alaska to this important conversation. B3AK is keeping track of overall funding levels and grant opportunities, and we've especially from the infrastructure bill, and others in the coming out of the Biden administration. But we focus on contextualizing these historic investments and sharing the stories of their impact. And my work with the Alaska Outdoor Alliance intersects perfectly with this exciting new statewide nonprofit. So not to overuse the word, but the infrastructure bill is exciting on so many fronts. And it's also a bit of a mixed bag. It's safe to say that there is an understanding in Congress that trails can be part of the solution to safer roads, connecting communities and reducing carbon emissions, because more people walking, biking, and rolling can mean less vehicles on the roads, less traffic, and less CO2 exhaust fumes. But we're going to have to work for this money. I think we've had some enthusiastic, conversations so far this afternoon about it, but the reality is we will have to work hard for it. As you heard from Senator Begich, the rules and the state is from the bill, and the state is still finding out how this is all going to play out. I was just talking to DOT the other day. They're still kind of getting their rules and stuff passed down to them and figuring out how this is going to go. And remember that a lot of this is around hard infrastructure or gray infrastructure, and like bridges and roads and all of that. So we really still need to band together to have our voices heard and make sure that we're at the table for these programs. So I'll just touch on a couple and then share with you the ways I think you can help make sure that we do actually get parts of this bills for our project. So it includes the Transportation Alternatives Program, which has existed. It's an existing program, but it's going to get a 70% increase over 5 years. And 95% of the state's apportionment will go to Alaska DOT and our 2 MPOs, which are, AMATs in Anchorage and Fast Planning in Fairbanks. So my recommendation, my first one to you, is that if you are in the Anchorage or Fairbanks MPO areas, that you would be well served to warm up your relationships with Joni Wilm in Anchorage and Jackson Fox and their staffs, because they're going to be having a lot of opportunities from this measure. And also one bit of a PR tip to remember for the future is that transportation alternatives funds may not be used for maintenance. So you can, like PR is my stock in trade, but so you can get around that. And I've heard recommendations from my colleagues elsewhere who are more savvy about this, by using other words that describe your project or its end goals. So you might use words like restoration or safety or rebuilding or connecting and connectivity. Those will be more important words to use and critical words to use instead of the word maintenance. Anyway, on to the Federal Highways Recreation Trails program, which was flat funded in the infrastructure bill, meaning there's no increases. But that said, on this note, I can't emphasize enough the importance of collaborating with our motorized friends, because as goes motorized, so goes non-motorized. Because the amount of funding for non-motorized trail grants must be equal to the motorized. They both get 30% each out of the pot that comes to Alaska. But if they don't get enough motorized applications, like let's say the ceiling is 300,000, but they only get $100,000 of motorized grants, well, that lowers that to 100,000 also for non-motorized trails. So like encourage your friends in motorized to be applying for RTP grants so that non-motorized projects can get their full funding. And then also an unsung category here is the mixed use. And just in an example of that, the mixed use category, which is motorized and motorized. So in Valdez, for example, we worked with the local snow machine club, who also had a lot of members with summer off-road machines, to identify trails that hikers and motorized users shared, and found segments that we both agreed could use repairs and bridges and reroutes that we could come together and apply for grants. And another important thing about RTP is that those grants can be used for federal match for other programs. So leverage that, think about, it, and it's only a 80-20 match, which is pretty good. And then again, it can be leveraged for elsewhere. Another program in the infrastructure bill is Safe Streets for All, which will fund system solutions that can and should include trails as a tool for safety. This part of the bill requires states to conduct a vulnerable user assessment and create a plan to mitigate pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities. Of course, I think everybody on this call could agree that trails and separated infrastructure absolutely should be part of the solution. There's way too much in this bill, and again, still a lot of uncertainties to cover in the few minutes here, but I do want to talk about 3 things you can do to help ensure more money for trails and active transportation projects that connect trails, neighborhoods, and I really like this new verbiage, low stress routes to everyday places. We've already talked about the infrastructure workshop next week, Monday and Tuesday. If you are not already planning to be there in person, hopefully they'll put the link up so that we can participate remotely. It'll go a long way toward demystifying the infrastructure bill and providing insights into where those opportunities will exist for nonprofits partnering probably a lot, either on their own or partnering with their local governments to apply for the funding out of this bill. And I'm going to tell you that be sure to speak up for your interests, because again, remember, there's going to be a lot of folks there. There's a lot of huge ports and harbors and highways and things that are going to be a focal point for a lot of areas, the ferry system. So be sure to speak up for your interests. And as Senator Begich said, it's worth just doing the process and being heard. And if we're heard more often, then we'll get more attention. On that note too, though, is that some of these things in the infrastructure bill weren't funded. Okay, the basket was put there, but they didn't get loaded up with money. So that's going to happen during the appropriations process. So for example, the Healthy Streets Program and the Active Transportation Infrastructure Improvement Program, big mouthful, but were both created in the bipartisan infrastructure law, but not funded. So it's up to us to appeal to Congress through the appropriations process to get these programs funded. And we're particularly lucky here in Alaska because Senator Dan Sullivan sits on the Committee of Commerce, Science, and Transportation. And we have a champion in Senator Murkowski. So we need to let both of them know about the projects that we would like to see funded in the appropriations process. And it would be helpful if you would mention the Healthy Streets Program and the Active Transportation Infrastructure Improvement Program. And to get more details about what that all means, and get some language templates of how to write your appropriations request. The League of American Cyclists has information on their website, and I can put a link in the chat. But for how to talk about the appropriations for these areas. And I would point out that Senator Murkowski already has appropriation forms on her website. And keep in mind, the deadlines are right. They just come up super fast. So April 15th is the deadline for sort of rural development, a whole bunch of other things, but in our world, the relevant piece is that, USDA and rural development. And then April 22nd is the deadline for Department of Interior and Transportation types of requests. So use that. And again, to reiterate, it is worth doing the process. We need to be heard. It's another way to be heard, another way to remind our elected officials that, outdoors means business, I guess is the way to say it. And so another thing you can do is join Alaska Outdoor Alliance's Active Transportation Coalition, which is brand new. And we want to first start out by saying that we applaud Governor Dunleavy for offering bills to budget $56 million in state funds to match federal requirements that will deliver $835 million in Infrastructure Act benefits to Alaska. And where we are concerned, in his budget, he particularly called out Pittman Robertson Wildlife Restoration and Dingle Johnson Sport Fish Restoration grants. Good news. Surface transportation and bridges. And bridges are big. But I would point out that after years of budget cuts resulting in slim crews and slim resources for our state Department of Transportation, it means that active transportation has taken sort of a backseat to other, burning priorities. So this is our time to move up the leaderboard. So AOA will be playing a more high profile role in this arena. Thanks to Ben Huey and Sitka Trailworks, we've gotten funding from the State Department of Health and to strengthen and grow a statewide active transportation coalition. So by mid-June, you'll see fresh content on the AOA site about this group. We'll have active transportation sessions at Confluence this year, which is we've moved up the dates. It's in Haines, September 7th to 9th. But we're encouraging folks to arrive by ferry since the captain of the LeConte has given us permission to host welcome sessions and networking on board during the beautiful passage from Juneau to Haines. So bring your bike and your hiking shoes and remember that together we are a force. Please participate in all these things. I'm sure Nils will have a lot more information about his deal coming up right next. And thanks to Alaska Trails and the vital role you play in advocating for trails.
Well, thanks for being here today, Lee. We really appreciate it. And why don't you drop the Alaska Outdoor Alliance website into the chat, and we will move quickly on to Niels Andreessen, who's the executive director of the Alaska Municipal League. And they've had a role in a website and other things trying to connect communities to the federal funding. And so that's why we invited Niels here today, including to talk about the April 12th gathering. But Niels, could you give us a general intro to the Municipal League and then what you're doing to help connect folks to federal funding?
Sure, thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. I feel like I'm new to a lot of you, but I also see a few old friends, so it's great. So if you're not familiar with the Alaska Municipal League, we work with all 165 cities and boroughs across Alaska to strengthen local governments. And over the last few years, a lot of our attention has been on helping local governments implement the CARES Act and ARPA, and now the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or IJA. And through that engagement at the local level with these different federal programs, we have, I would say, expanded our collaboration with a variety of partners to include AFN and the Office of the Governor and ANTHC and Denali Commission, the university, the School Superintendents Association, Small Business Development Center, and others, to have a network of organizations who are really committed to making the most of these federal investment and federal relief programs. That today has led to something I think we're calling it the Alaska Infrastructure Coordinating Committee being in place. Those organizations, an informal network who meet regularly to talk about, especially right now, this infrastructure package and how Alaskans can maximize what they get from it. On infrastructure, I didn't prepare slides because I wasn't sure what everybody else was going to say, and I didn't want to duplicate what they were doing. I think one thing I would start with is take a deep breath. It's billions of dollars, and they're not all going to show up right now. It's billions of dollars, and there's not a NOFO that you're responding to right now. It's going to be okay. We've got 5 years of programs that are, some programs are reauthorized, some programs are appropriated, some programs are brand new, and nobody has any idea what they're going to look like. But they're going to come out this year at some point, and then they'll come out next year, and then they'll come out the following year. So you don't have to rush into this space unprepared. You don't have to rush into this space at all. It's a good time to take a step back and reflect on what priorities look like, reflect on what your infrastructure projects, how well developed proposals might be, and make sure you've got everything in order to, when there's the right opportunity at the right time, you're in the best position you can be to respond. I think it's been mentioned by others that this was hard or gray, or this is other infrastructure that's really focused on by the federal government. It's 5 buckets. It's water and sewer, eliminating unserved and underserved communities in Alaska. Maybe half the funding is for transportation, which maybe you fall a little bit into. Broadband is the 3rd bucket. Energy and power, though not like, it's for hydrogen hubs and electric vehicles. It's not for improving your diesel systems in different communities. And finally, resilience is the 5th bucket, some combination of climate change and pollution prevention. So those are the 5 buckets. There's 20 different agencies involved, but you can imagine they're all kind of scurrying, and that's probably about what it looks like in DC, as they're trying to figure out exactly how this is going to work. And we know that it looks like scurrying because we watch them go through CARES Act and ARPA implementation, and every 3 weeks there's a new announcement with new guidance and reframing of what they said the month before. So be patient with federal agencies who are still trying to get their feet under them, who are doing their best to respond to the bipartisan infrastructure law, and who will get this stuff out in a timely manner and responsive to not just needs in different communities around America, but to the circumstance that you experience here in Alaska. And there are a lot of agencies who are really trying to understand what Alaska looks like. How is Alaska different? What does tribal consultation look like, and how does it fit in? What do disadvantaged communities look like in Alaska, and how is that different? How should they score non-agricultural areas differently in Alaska than Ohio? Federal agencies are still working through a lot of that. There's also a Justice 40 initiative that says, something like 40% of these federal investments need to flow into disadvantaged communities. We're still, and I think federal agencies are still trying to figure out, what does that mean? How do they do that? Is all of Alaska rural? Is all of Alaska disadvantaged? What are the criteria involved in that? So that's kind of big picture. 5 big buckets, billions of dollars. Some of it will flow to the state as formula funding and will have started already. Most of it's competitive. A large chunk of it is dedicated to tribal governments, but there's not been a lot of word on what that would look like. It will require a large amount of collaboration, a significant amount of collaboration between state government, tribal governments, and local governments to process the formula funding that's coming through and to manage it effectively, and to be as responsive as possible to the competitive grants that'll be out there. And there's going to be tons, right? There are tons of them. I get emails every morning that tries to sort through what makes sense for Alaska and what doesn't. Working with all these other partners that we've got in place, we have we established this akfederalfunding.org, which is your window, your clearinghouse for all things ARPA, American Rescue Plan, and BIL, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So as ARPA and BIL NOFOs come out, Notice of Funding Opportunities come out, they go up on that website. As formula funding is announced, there's a ARPA and a BIL tracker where you can see what the program is, learn more about it, how much is coming to Alaska, or if it's not understood, then it won't be reflected there, but you'll have access to all of that. A lot of it's pulled from the guidebook, but it's also coming from lots of other announcements that are coming out daily. We have a grant writing pool available. So if you're looking for a grant writer, there's 8 or so grant writers up there. There's an engineering firm grant writing pool up there, 8 or 10 engineering firms who will help with grant writing or project development for those who need it. We have a grant writing hotline for any local government in Alaska or tribal government to call in, spend 30 minutes with a professional grant writer and talk a little bit about, do you have any liens? Are you eligible? What's your project? What's the right grant opportunity? And we've got that opportunity available on that site. And then we've got also for local governments, once they've got a project developed, they're aiming for a competitive grant. If they've got a grant proposal, they can send it to us and we'll have a nationally recognized engineering firm look at their benefit cost analysis, look at their proposal development, look at all the different attachments and everything, and make sure that they're going to score as best they can based on what they've got and suggest ways to improve it. So what we've done is really focus on how do we make the most of this for our members, for local governments, but also in partnership with AFN and others to bring this to others, other types of government, to tribal governments and others too. I feel like I should be wrapping up here soon, so I'm going to aim for wrapping up with the event next week. We know that Senator Murkowski's got the event on the 11th, this grant symposium with 1,000 of your closest friends joining us at the Denina Center. 20 plus federal agencies, a dozen state agencies, all in the same room. There is a virtual element. I think all the program presentations will be posted online or virtual, but meeting people in the room, meeting those federal agencies at their booths, there's not a virtual option. There's no way to do that virtually. So I hope for those of you in the room, you get a chance to meet with agencies, learn more about and establish relationships. And all those agencies are going to have a ton of webinars and technical assistance forums and other help that they offer throughout the year that you can access. And you just got to meet them first to know how to navigate that space. On the 12th, AML and other partners, this AICC, we're hosting an infrastructure symposium part 2, I guess, but 3 different sessions, a regional planning workshop where we expect most people to go and really chart out for each of these different infrastructure buckets, what do regional priorities look like and how do we navigate some of the challenges that might be out there. We'll also talk about procurement planning, match requirements, city, tribal collaboration, and maintenance and operations. And I think maintenance and operations is often forgotten because we're focused on this new money right now. We're focused on new infrastructure. We've got to keep in mind that on the other side of $10 billion in new investment, we've got to run those systems and we've got to have a plan in place for doing so. 2 other sessions on the 12th, one grant writing training, so grant development. We'll have professional grant writers in the room presenting and working through. If you're new to grant writing, that'll be the place to be. And the 3rd session next Tuesday is going to be focused on workforce development. It's maybe not surprising to you that we're 30,000 people short right now. We're 16,000 workers short just where we're at right now. And we expect to need another 14 to 16,000 people as part of this infrastructure development. So 3 sessions next week. And out of that process, I hope we've got something of a roadmap for where Alaska is headed, where Alaska can head, and in support of its communities and partners who are, again, making the most from this generational investment that we've got in front of us. And there's plenty of work on the legislative side too. You heard from Senator Begich, but they've got still a month and a half of work to do on how is the state going to be really participating in this space effectively. How are they going to help communities and others with local matching funds, with lines of credit, whatever they need to be able to respond to these competitive grants. Steve, I'll leave it at that.
That sounds great.
There as possible.
No, that's wonderful. We appreciate your kind of charting that roadmap for the communities across the state and hearing about it today and hearing what's going to happen on both the 11th and the 12th. We really appreciate it. And thanks for your time today. Everybody, I'm sorry that it's run over time so far, especially to our last presenter, James King of the U.S. Forest Service. I'm sticking around to hear his presentation because I know it's going to be awesome. So I'll invite James to go ahead and share his screen. But next year, I'm going to, maybe I'll try to both double the funding and double the amount of time for the funding panel. So that'll be my goals for next year. But many of you know James King, who works for the U.S. Forest Service. He had prior jobs as the Parks Director in Bellingham, but also the State Parks Director here in Alaska. But James is going to tell us about their Great American Outdoors Act stuff, past, present, and future. Take it away, James.
Okay. Let's see if I can.
I do have your presentation. I can share it. Oh, you got it. Boom.
Can you see it?
Can. Loud and clear. You're looking good.
Okay. I will go relatively quick so people can get on to other things. So James King with the Forest Service. I'm the Regional Director of Recreation Lands and Trails. And of course, the big exciting news in our agency. There's a lot of exciting news. As others have mentioned, staffing is going up, money is going up, and Great America Outdoors Act has been an amazing thing to bring a lot of funding in to fix up trails and other infrastructure. So in 2020, of course, the Forest Service started getting $285 million a year for 5 years for projects. In the Alaska region, we've got about 22 million over FY20 or fiscal year 21 and 22. And so there's 21 projects, trail projects on the Tongass and 11 trail projects on the Chugach. It's been a long time since we've had that many projects going all at once and had that kind of money available to do that. For fiscal year 23 and 24, those projects have been submitted but haven't been announced yet. And then the final year will be in fiscal year 25. Here, I'm going to show very quickly. You got to look quick because I'm going to move on. But this is just a list of trails on the Tongass that are being fixed up across the Tongass. And every community's got some, and it's great to see that effort. And I'm going to show just for fun some before and afters. Pack Creek on Admiralty Island, you can tell it was a muddy mess and getting better on the right. Gavin Hill and Sitka on Harbor Mountain, again, looking better on the right than it was on the left. Shelikoff, same thing, better on the right than it was on the left. Here we go for Chugach. You got to look quick. Some trails that are being fixed up on the Chugach. And I'll show just a couple of pictures. Henry Ridge in Cordova, you can obviously see looking much better. I had to throw this project in here. This is Goose Bay Cabin on the Glacier Ranger District. And I love the picture on the right. They get an award for creativity for using a sled to improve a trail. And here we go. There's the final cabin, but you got to enjoy the sled still in the picture, and it looks like it may have survived being drug up the trail. Winter Creek in Girdwood, obviously looking better on the right than it was on the left. Let's see, the Southeast Alaska Sustainability Strategy has been a big thing down here. $20 million going to the communities and organizations around Southeast Alaska. And there are 3 trails in that: the Angoon Danger Point Trail, the Southeast Alaska Water Trail in Sitka, and the Sitka Sound Coastal Trail. Other funding sources, of course, the big exciting news that Aaron Thiel talked about earlier is the $5.7 million earmarked for the Iditarod. Lots of work going to happen there, lots of new bridges, trail connections. It'll be exciting to see that happen there on the Chugach. Our base allocation right now is about $750,000. That is split between the 2 forests. We get an additional couple $100,000 for Trail Stewardship Challenge. And again, the big news is we're increasing nearly 100 positions across the 2 forests right now. The challenge is finding people that want to do that. But that's at all levels of the Forest Service, including trail crews and maintenance and other things. So pretty exciting, both financially and staffing wise, to be staffing up. Legacy Roads and Trails is a program that's was funded it's been funded before, but it was refunded in the infrastructure bill. 3.5 million annually will come to our region. And those projects, it's out for requests for proposals right now. So that will be coming back in. A lot of that is around aquatic organism passage and trying to take care of watersheds and those sorts of things, but there is money in there for trails. I think the other thing that, just to highlight briefly out of the Infrastructure Act, that's pretty exciting. There's some money in there for recreation projects. This goes beyond deferred maintenance. Great America Outdoors Act was about deferred maintenance. This is about, where is the trailhead over capacity? Let's build a bigger trailhead or campground or whatever that may be. The other thing that's really exciting in there that Aaron mentioned is there's a bunch of money in there for cabins. We anticipate getting a fairly high percentage of that funding. And so look for new cabins coming to the Forest Service over the next 5 years. It's 5-year money. So it'll be really excited. I love it, Beth. You're dancing for us. Pretty exciting though, time at the Forest Service. It's sort of a once in a career time for us at the Forest Service. It's been a lot of years of cutting back and struggling to just do the basic maintenance on things. And as many of you know, we've struggled with that for a long time. So it's pretty exciting to be doing something different. Public comments are always important to us. Please give us your comments, and there's several ways to do that. In this fall, we'll be opening up again for another public comment period, and we'll be looking for input on the final year of projects for Great American Outdoors Act. We're always looking for input on the Southeast Alaska Sustainable Strategy, and Legacy Roads and Trails is also, we're going to be looking for input on that. And I'm going to end it here in the interest of time. These are just some places, and I know Steve has the PowerPoint, and you can get it from him to get these links. But Great America Outdoors Act project dashboard is kind of neat. You can go there and look at projects all across the country, and you can look at the ones in Alaska, and you can click on them and see where they're at in the construction project. And after they're built, there's usually before and after pictures. It's a really great way to understand what projects have been funded and what's moving forward. There's also a link to the Southeast Alaska Sustainability Strategy and the public comment information. And that you can go in there now and look at things. It will open up for new comments again this fall, but that's another great place to look for information. The last thing I think I would say is, as we're going through this I'm going to call it regrowth. We used to be a much bigger agency, and we went through a lot of shrinking, and now we're going back up. to try and get on top of maintaining things, of truly understanding the needs and wants of the public and getting our infrastructure to the right size to match those needs and wants. And I highly encourage people to go to their districts, to the district rangers, to have conversations. If you're looking for funding, if you're particularly looking for partnerships, we're always looking for partnerships. Go to the district rangers and have those discussions about how you might be able to partner with or help as we move forward with our projects. And I'm going to leave it there because we are way out of time.
Well, thanks, James. I appreciate you batting cleanup here, and I'm sorry again to you and the other presenters, and to everybody in the audience that that we ran over time so much. We'll do a better job budgeting next year. But like you mentioned, we've got the I've got your presentation and the other ones that we will post on our website, and I encourage everybody to go visit those websites and do just what you're saying, because I appreciate the long view that you, Niels, and others bring to this, of like, it is a once in a generation thing, but it's also going to last for quite a while, like the Great American Outdoors Act has. So anyway, I very much appreciate your time today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow, where we have another packed day of the Trails Conference. But thanks again to all our presenters, and thanks for tuning in today, and take care.